Welcome back, family. If you're new here, you're home. Grab your favorite drink, relax, and enjoy today's story with us. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. And if stories like this touch your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Now, let's begin. If fear had a name, it was Marco Moretti. At only 35 years old, he ruled one of the largest mafia empires in America. People didn't question him. They obeyed him. Marco never smiled, never celebrated, never forgave. His late father built the empire. Marco made it even more powerful. His younger brother, Vincent Moretti, stood by his side. Vincent was loyal, calm, respectful. Unlike Marco, he still believed kindness had value. Many times Vincent tried to remind his brother that life was more than power. Marco always gave the same answer. Feelings make men weak. That was the way he lived. Work, money, power. Nothing else mattered. Not even family. The only person who never stopped loving him was his mother. Katherine Moretti. She was elegant, kind, loved by everyone inside the mansion. But she carried a dangerous secret. 4 months. She had been suffering from recurring seizures. Not even Marco knew. She hid her medication. She hid her doctor's appointments. She didn't want her son distracted from running the empire. That evening, the Moretti mansion came alive. Chefs hurried through the kitchen. Bodyguards secured every entrance. Luxury cars filled the driveway. Everything was ready. It was Katherine Moretti's birthday dinner. A celebration fit for the queen of the Moretti family. Marco glanced at the decorations, then went straight back to discussing business. His mother smiled sadly. She wished her son would look at her. Just once. But he never did. He had no idea that before the night was over, everything he believed about strength would be shattered. And somewhere inside the mansion, a playful little 3-year-old girl named Chloe laughed as she ran through the servants' hallway. Neither she nor Marco had any idea their lives were about to change forever. Every empire has people who are seen, and people who are invisible. Catherine Russo belonged to the second group. She was a single mother, a hard-working housekeeper. She cleaned the halls, prepared the guest rooms, served meals, worked from sunrise until late at night. Not for luxury, not for herself, but for 2 people she loved more than anything. Her little daughter, Chloe, and her sick elderly mother waiting at home. Every dollar mattered. Every extra shift helped. Still, she never complained. She simply kept going. Then there was Chloe. 3 years old. Full of energy. Always smiling. Always asking questions. She knew every guard by name. She waved at every driver. She laughed with the gardeners. She followed the chefs around the kitchen hoping for cookies. The entire staff adored her. She made the mansion feel alive. Everyone smiled when Chloe walked by. Everyone. Except Marco Moretti. To him, she wasn't Chloe. She was only the maid's child. That afternoon, Katherine received terrible news. Her usual babysitter had cancelled. She looked around helplessly. She couldn't miss work. Not tonight. Not during Mrs. Moretti's birthday dinner. With no other choice, she held Chloe's tiny hand, took a deep breath, and quietly walked toward the grand dining hall. The Moretti mansion had never looked more beautiful. Crystal chandeliers lit up the grand dining hall. Golden candles flickered across the long table. Rare wines filled every glass. The city's most powerful mafia captains took their seats. Lawyers arrived in expensive suits. Trusted business allies laughed over million-dollar deals. Everyone came to honor Katherine Moretti. Everyone. Except the one person she wanted beside her most. Marco sat only a few seats away. But his eyes never met hers. He was too busy discussing shipments, territories, money. The empire always came first. Katherine smiled anyway. She had grown used to it. Near the back of the hall, Chloe stood quietly beside the staff. She wasn't interested in the fancy food or the expensive decorations. Her little eyes stayed on Katherine. She watched her laugh. She watched her smile. Then, she noticed something. Katherine didn't look like herself. For a moment, her smile faded. Her hand trembled ever so slightly. Chloe tilted her little head. Something didn't feel right. Dinner continued. Laughter filled the room. No one noticed Katherine becoming unusually quiet. She blinked several times. Her fingers tightened around her wine glass. A strange look crossed her face. She tried to hide it. She had done it many times before. One of the captains raised a toast. Everyone lifted their glasses. Everyone. Except Katherine. She suddenly became still. Marco looked up for only a second. "You look tired, Mother." Then he returned to his business conversation. Katherine tried to smile. But before she could answer, her body stiffened. The wine glass slipped from her hand. She collapsed onto the floor. The entire dining hall fell silent. Then chaos erupted. Guards rushed forward. Guests jumped from their seats. Someone shouted for a doctor. Another yelled to call an ambulance. Nobody knew what to do, nobody. Except Chloe. She ran through the crowd without fear. She knelt beside Katherine. Gently touched her face. Then her eyes grew wide. She had seen this before. Her grandmother. It looked exactly the same. Chloe quickly looked at the frightened adults. "Move back," she cried. "Give Grandma space." The room froze. Even Marco stood speechless. For the first time in years, the most feared mafia boss in the city didn't know what to do. Chloe looked at her mother with frightened eyes. "Mommy. Grandma does this too." Katherine Russo's heart skipped a beat. She immediately understood. "My mother." She quickly knelt beside Mrs. Moretti. "Everyone, please move back. Give her space. Don't hold her down." The guard stepped away. The guests fell silent. Vincent pulled out his phone. "Call an ambulance." One of the bodyguards dialed emergency services immediately. Katherine checked the time. "We need to time the seizure." Chloe stayed close, holding her mother's hand. She never looked away from Katherine Moretti. Seconds felt like hours. Then, the seizure slowly stopped. Katherine began breathing normally again. Everyone let out a sigh of relief. A few minutes later, the paramedics arrived. After examining Katherine, one of the doctors looked at the family. "You did the right thing. You stayed calm. You gave her space. You timed the seizure. And most importantly, you didn't put anything in her mouth. That prevented serious complications." The room became silent. Marco slowly turned toward Chloe. A tiny 3-year-old girl. Had known more than 50 powerful adults standing in that room. For the first time, the ruthless Mafia boss couldn't find a single word to say. The hospital hallway was silent. Marco stood outside his mother's room. For the first time, he looked afraid. The doctor walked toward him. "Mrs. Moretti is stable." Marco finally breathed. Then the doctor continued. "She has been suffering seizures for months." Marco frowned. "What do you mean, months?" The doctor nodded. "She has been receiving treatment. But she kept it a secret." Marco looked stunned. "Why didn't she tell me?" The doctor answered quietly. "She didn't want to burden you. She said you already carried enough responsibility." Those words hit harder than any bullet. Marco lowered his head. He knew every rival family, every business deal, every enemy planning against him. But he never noticed. His own mother was silently fighting a battle alone. Vincent placed a hand on his brother's shoulder. Marco didn't speak. He couldn't. For the first time in years, the ruthless Kingpin felt something he thought he had buried forever. Guilt. That night, Marco couldn't stop thinking about Chloe. How could a 3-year-old know exactly what to do? Then Katherine Russo quietly told him the truth. Months earlier, Chloe's grandmother had suffered a seizure at home. Chloe was terrified. So Katherine knelt beside her and gently said, "If Grandma starts shaking, stay calm. Call for help. Move anything that could hurt her. And never panic." Chloe listened carefully. She never forgot those words. When Mrs. Moretti collapsed, she simply remembered what her mother had taught her. Marco stood in silence. He finally understood. Power hadn't saved his mother. Money hadn't saved her. Fear hadn't saved her. A mother's love had taught a little girl how to save a life. And in that moment, Marco realized something that shook him to his core. Love had taught Chloe everything. Power had taught him nothing. A few days later, Katherine Moretti returned home. She was smiling again. This time, Marco was waiting for her. He gently held her hand. "I'm sorry, Mother. I should have been there." Katherine smiled. "You are now." Marco turned to Katherine Russo. Thank you. You saved my mother. He doubled her salary. Paid every medical bill for her sick mother. Then he knelt in front of Chloe. You'll never have to worry about school. I'll make sure you get the best education. Chloe simply smiled. Can I still visit Grandma Katherine? Marco smiled for the first time in years. Anytime you want. As the weeks passed, the mansion felt different. Marco greeted the staff. He listened more. He spoke more kindly. The workers couldn't believe their eyes. The ruthless Kingpin was changing. Slowly. Quietly. Months passed. Mrs. Moretti grew stronger every day. But the biggest change was Marco. He no longer left the mansion before sunrise. He had breakfast with his mother. He laughed with Vincent. He even sat with the staff during lunch from time to time. Something no one had ever seen before. Whenever Chloe came running through the mansion, Marco no longer looked away. He smiled. The little girl who had once been invisible had become part of the family. Marco also began treating every worker with respect. He thanked the cooks. He greeted the guards. He listened to the gardeners. The mansion no longer felt cold. It finally felt like a home. His men noticed the difference too. They still feared their boss. But now, they also respected him. Marco finally understood a lesson no amount of money could buy. Real strength wasn't making people fear you. Real strength was protecting the people who depended on you. 1 year later, the Moretti mansion celebrated Katherine's birthday again. But this time, there were no powerful captains. No business meetings. No expensive speeches. Just family. Before everyone sat down, Katherine smiled. I want Chloe beside me. The little girl happily climbed into the chair next to her. Marco watched them together. Then, for the first time in many years, he smiled. A real smile. Not because of power. Not because of money. But because his family was finally complete. After dinner, Marco stood up. I have something to announce. I'm creating the Katherine Moretti Foundation. It will support the families of domestic workers. And it will help teach people how to recognize seizures and epilepsy before it's too late. He looked at Chloe. Then quietly said, I spent years believing power meant controlling people. A 3-year-old taught me that real power is paying attention. The room fell silent. Then everyone applauded, just as the emotional moment settled. Chloe raised her tiny hand. Can we have cake now? The entire room burst into laughter. Even Marco laughed the loudest. At that moment, the most feared Mafia boss in the city was no longer remembered for his power. He was remembered for the heart he finally found. Sometimes, the strongest person in the room isn't the one with the most power. It's the one with the kindest heart. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. If you've made it all the way to the end, know that you're more than just a viewer. You're part of this family that I'd love to know where you're watching from, so leave your country or city in the comments below. It's always amazing to see this wonderful family growing from all around the world. And tell me, what lesson did you take away from today's story? I'd truly love to read your thoughts. If this story touched your heart, made you smile, or reminded you of someone special, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message today. Your support means more than you know, and it helps us continue bringing you powerful stories that inspire, uplift, and remind us what really matters in life. Until next time, take care of yourself. Take care of the people you love. Never underestimate the power of kindness. And never ignore the quiet people around you. Because sometimes, they become the heroes we never saw coming. Thank you for watching, my family. God bless you. And I'll see you in the next unforgettable story.